Hello, and welcome to the 404 Media Podcast, where we bring you unparalleled access to hidden worlds, both online and IRL. 404 Media is a journalist-founded company and needs your support. To subscribe, go to 404media.co. You'll get bonus content every week, and subscribers also get access to additional episodes where we respond to their best comments. And they also get early access to our interview series, which you are listening to right now. Gain access to that content at 404media.co. This week, I'm joined by Chris Gilliard, a surveillance justice expert and Just Tech fellow at the MacArthur Foundation. I've talked to Chris for so many stories over the years. He's one of the smartest researchers studying surveillance, privacy, and how they affect us and the people around us. His book, Luxury Surveillance, is coming out early next year. Today, we're talking about luxury surveillance, or how big tech companies get us to opt ourselves and the people around us into surveillance. Here's my conversation with Chris. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. When we started this interview series all of 1 week ago, I knew I wanted to have you on really early because I feel like our interests and careers and paths have intertwined a lot. I feel like often whenever I'm writing about some dystopian, horrible thing, you're like one of the first people that I want to call. And not because I want to make you sad, but because I feel like you always have very good context for why a specific technology is working in a specific way, or how surveillance is affecting people and sort of spreading to the masses. And so, one, thank you so much for being that person that I can call, and always have. I feel like you always have the right perspective and a very smart perspective. But two, I feel like this conversation will probably go all over the place for that reason, because we've talked about so much over the years. I guess I want to start with luxury surveillance because I believe this is sort of what you're most known for in the public sphere is sort of spreading awareness of this idea of luxury surveillance, which is, well, I'll let you define it, but basically it's people who opt into surveillance because it's easy and makes their lives better, or so they think. And then that's sort of distributed across the population in all sorts of nefarious ways. But how do you think about luxury surveillance? I know this is a project that you've been working on for quite some time. There's a book coming out, etc. But what is luxury surveillance for people who don't know?
No, that's exactly it. I think I think that definition holds up. I started thinking about it mostly because most of the models that I saw, kind of for surveillance, talked about, and I think this is important and it's true and it matters, but so many of the models talked about surveillance that was kind of deployed against people, involuntarily, often against kind of the most marginalized or most vulnerable populations, and that's true. But as I was writing about surveillance and talking to people and things like that, a couple of things kept coming up. And one is that people would regurgitate some version of the nothing to hide argument, or they would kind of privilege their own needs or desires in front of everything else, so they would say, if I talked about video doorbells, they'd say, well, I still need to get my packages and things like that. And so I started trying to think of kind of how to leverage that in terms that I thought would help people get a better grasp of sort of what some of the problems were with that. As you know, I wish it moved the needle to just tell people that, oh, this is going to be used to deport your neighbors, but unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't move the needle. And that people, I think, if they understand the degree to which some of these systems come for everyone, sometimes kind of helps a little bit. And so the initial comparison I came up with was talking about Fitbits and Apple Watches as analogous to ankle monitors.
Right.
And that's where that came from.
Right. So I want to tell you an experience that I had recently, and you can tell me if this is luxury surveillance. I feel like maybe it helps frame the conversation a little bit. Are you familiar with the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles?
Um, no, who plays there?
So the Clippers play at the Intuit Dome, and it's
Okay.
a new, like, several billion-dollar arena that opened last year. And a couple of friends and I wanted to go to a basketball game, watch the Clippers. So I bought tickets on StubHub. And to get the tickets, I had to download the Intuit Dome app. Like, there was no way of transferring the tickets through Ticketmaster, which already have tons of problems with Ticketmaster, but such is life if you want to go to a concert or a sports game or whatever. So I had to download that. I had to give them tons of information just to sort of get the tickets. And not only that, everyone in my party also had to download the app. So I couldn't get all four tickets. Uh, I had to get one, and then someone else, my team in my group, had to get one. And they have this entry system that you scan your face in the app, and then you enter with facial recognition, and that face is connected to your wallet. And then the entire, like, interior of the arena, they have tried to, like, get rid of humans at every possible angle. So it's like they have stores in there, but they're just walk out stores where you just grab something and you leave. Um, you have to, like, scan into these areas with your face. Uh, and they claim that you can use your credit card without this, but those like are always broken. And then, of course, like, once you're in this area, you don't, like, interact with any humans, like, basically at any level. And if you want to opt out of this system, they, like, make you walk around the entire arena to go to one single gate where you can, like, use the old barcode system. And so the first time I went, that's what I did, because I was like, I don't want to do this. Second time, we were running late, and it was a playoff game. And so I was just like, you know what? Like, fuck it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I did it. I have had a few beers, so I, like, opted in. And I feel like that is my life in many ways, where it's like you can often try to resist these things, but it's often, like, very inconvenient. They make things, like, worse. But also, like, opting into these systems in the first place, like, download the app, give them all your information, scan your face, like, that was super inconvenient as well. Um, and I don't have a question here, but to me, it's just like I thought of you immediately. I was like, this is luxury surveillance, or at least it's trying to give this, like, seamless experience where you give them your face, you just grab a beer, grab chicken tenders, you don't interact with any human beings, and, like, all the data goes, like, God knows where. Like, who knows what happens to it? And I don't know. I thought of you, and I'm curious what you think of that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely is. I mean, it kind of engages another thing that I've talked about in the past, which is I call friction-free racism, right? That the first of all, like, who has the capacity to do this? Like, who's got the phone, the credit card, like all these ways that, but also who fantasizes about this experience where you don't interact with anyone else? I mean, I've worked in the at stadiums and at the vendors and things like that. So um, I don't fantasize about the experience where I go get a beer and a popcorn and don't talk to the person behind the counter, but I know that people do. And it is, I think, a mark of privilege. But it also, there's so many ways that it ties into so many other things, which is like going to a game is supposed to be a communal experience. The people who work there are part of that community. I mean, or they should be. Like, I think of them as that. And so to say, like, to pitch as a privilege or a bonus or benefit that you can kind of slide through the experience, and all you have to do is pay for it with your face. I think is yeah, I think it's a prime example of that. And the other part is that you are incentivized to believe that it's to your benefit, and that the only way to opt out, I mean, we've seen it in the airport, for instance, is to undergo a series of sort of onerous steps in order to not do this thing, which is supposed to be good for you, or be better for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that it's not a far jump from there, but I think a lot about the delivery robots that are driving around Los Angeles and college campuses and other places all over the country where, um, again, you've taken something that's already kind of abstracted, like you have traditional delivery, and then you have things like Uber Eats and Grubhub, and the associated like algorithmic management of those workers and the depersonalization of the whole situation, where it's like, just drop it off, like don't talk to me, don't look at me, like food
Right.
arrives. And then you just literally get rid of the human, or well, you put the human maybe in like in Nebraska or something with an Xbox controller to drive around the food in these little robots. But then also you attach cameras and microphones to the robots, because this is the property of these delivery companies, and people don't like these robots, so they're attacking them all the time. And sort of the side effect of all of this is, like, there are more cameras that can be subpoenaed by cops that often don't have to be subpoenaed by cops. They are sort of given footage willingly. And for this, it's like something where a rich privileged person abstracts themselves from the entire like food delivery experience, but then they're also opting in all of their neighbors to this type of surveillance. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because you talk a lot about that in your work, where it's like you are opting other people into surveillance via your decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if like, frankly, if these decisions only hurt the rich people or the people who, signed up for it, like, I kind of wouldn't care. But that's sort of the unspoken part, is that we're all sucked up into these systems when people engage in them, not only in the way that you mentioned, but like it normalizes it, like it when these things are seen as kind of luxury or aspirational or making your life easier, it normalizes it in a way, I think, that is really, unhelpful, like harmful. That when everyone has a video doorbell, when everyone is carrying around a microphone, when people are wearing glasses, that with cameras, it and we've seen it. I mean, we've seen it um, with ICE and CBP. We've seen it with states and municipalities requesting footage of protesters. We've seen it with like Flock and automated license plate readers. That these things that are promoted as some kind of benefit, or safety for people, wind up, we've seen it in ed tech, that these systems, like, wind up making lots of people less safe.
I remember a bad past, where whenever I needed glasses, I had to go to multiple places that all felt like stuffy doctor's offices. And I had to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on glasses I didn't really like, and had to wait weeks and weeks to get them. Warby Parker changed all that. Warby Parker uses nothing but premium materials in each frame. They design the frames in-house, and their collection includes different silhouettes, colors, and fits to suit every face and every fashion style. I love that it's a one-stop shop. They offer everything you need for happier eyes: eyeglasses, sunglasses, contact lenses, and eye exams. You can shop with them online and in stores. Warby Parker has over 300 retail locations across the US and Canada, and their glasses start at just $95 and include prescription lenses with anti-reflective scratch-resistant coatings. Add a pair and save 15% when you purchase 2 or more prescription pairs of glasses or sunglasses. This offer is available both online and in stores. Free shipping and free 30-day returns. I've been going to Warby Parker for years now, once I learned that they had figured out the glasses game. And I haven't really looked anywhere else since. And if you have a big head like mine, you'll love their virtual try-on system that lets you figure out which frames and what size you need. Gone are the days where you'll be disappointed with your glasses. Warby Parker has over 300 locations to help you find your next pair of glasses. You can also head over to warbyparker.com/404media right now to try on any pair virtually. That's warbyparker.com/404media. warbyparker.com/404media. Do you think that there's a way to design some of these systems in a way that they are safer? Or like what is your sort of perspective on, I mean, it's such a broad class of things, but like what is your like perspective on something like, I don't know, like an Uber, a food delivery robot, and then I think we can probably get into like Flock and Ring doorbells and things like that. But like these in Amazon, like I want my stuff in one day. I'm going to be targeted with advertising that is going to hit me with really convenient things because they know so much about me and they know that I'm out of cereal or whatever. Like, I guess, do you think that there is a way to design these design technology so that it is more respectful of users while also being like providing this convenience, or do we need to sacrifice some of that convenience for our own privacy and the privacy of others?
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting question for me, right? Like, I think some of these things shouldn't exist, like it's a sort of you don't got to hand it to them kind of question. Like, I think that it's understated the degree to which some of these things are really corrosive and harmful to society. The idea of that I should be able to order non-essential things and they are, a drone drops them off at my house an hour later, things like that. I mean, there are use cases, but mostly no. And so I think, so my kind of short answer is the only way to do that would be to divorce it from capitalism. I mean, I think about the push towards smart glasses, and there are some cases where people talk about them, for instance, like translation. And so would it be cool to have a thing that immediately like translates something that worked and wasn't wonky, but like, so yeah, like, and I don't think those need to be glasses, for instance, like those could be headphones, but I mean, this is like a sort of like capitalism kind of ruins everything. In that mostly companies they're not incentivized in any way to produce these things at scale in a way that would protect people's privacy or wouldn't be invasive or wouldn't be corrosive. Um, there are some design decisions, I think, that make these things worse, because like companies sort of try to maximize their intrusiveness. But a lot of these things, like I don't really think should exist. I think that the idea that convenience kind of trumps all really has been, yeah, I think it's a very harmful way to go about things.
Well, it's this idea that everything should be frictionless, and if you don't submit to these systems, we are going to add a lot of friction, like an
Yeah,
unnecessary
yeah,
amount of friction. Um, Something you said made me think about like my reporting with AI slop, which is just like, we can talk about how AI has changed the calculate or supercharge a lot of these things that you're talking about and sort of the incentives of these AI companies. But I think a lot about how um, you'll talk to like someone who's really excited about AI, a generative AI, which is, I feel like, fewer and further between for me. But like every once in a while, I'll like run into someone who, like a friend of a friend who's like, yeah, I like really love how I can storyboard with Runway ML or something. And it can make me, help me write my scripts and things like that. And I think often of like, the like best intentioned people using AI to make their little projects and things like that. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like the vast majority of what we see on the internet using these systems are like highly corrosive, highly invasive, used to like further inflame tensions. And uh, they're just like polluting the internet. And I think about that like when you mentioned smart glasses and things like that as well, where it's like, yes, maybe they can be used for translation, and there should be like better accessibility tech. I also think about like, I would love to use Meta glasses to like film myself cooking for myself. So I'd be like, oh, that's like a camera on my face for use in my own home. But that's not how people are using it. People are
Yeah.
using it to like go film viral TikToks where they're harassing people in public and things like that. And I guess it's just like, I personally feel I'm just like, we can't be trusted with this technology as a species, really. And the incentives of these big tech companies are not like responsible use of these technologies. They're like, you know, use them to replace human contact and use them to spy on your neighbors and use them to like inflame tensions and like keep yourself safe and that sort of thing. Um, and I guess it does kind of go back to like the incentives of capitalism, kind of, where it's like
Yeah.
it's
I
always
mean,
like it's like
I hate.
maximalist.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, or what?
Yeah. I mean, and I hate it because it sounds reductive, but I think for a lot of these things, you have to ask why they exist. Why are um, companies pouring billions and in some cases trillions of dollars into these things? And also, when, sometimes even their own research says, like, this is the effect, or this is how people are going to use it, or now that people are using it, this is what it's doing. Even with those things, like, when we think about like the chatbots and how they've been linked to suicide, particularly of young people. And it's like one of those should cause the people at those companies to like go pull some plugs at the data centers, like, but there's been far more than one, that and then companies will come out and say, well, we've addressed that, or for instance, character AI, I think, is now doing some kind of or they are going to start putting in like kind of age restrictions or something like that, or um and like it really seems insufficient, um particularly given the harms, right? I mean, like throughout even recent history, like we've seen examples of when children are harmed, when someone tried to commit a terrorist act, or anything like that, that there have been pretty extreme reactions in terms of like uh, reactions in terms of trying to like protect the public. Um, but that seems like sort of like a bygone era now. Um, but like, because and like the thing is, like, when for something like Sora, I was just kind of rereading your piece on Sora and the Facebook slop, and it's like, why? So, like a really important question is like, why does Sora exist? Like, what is it for? A friend of like mine, and like actually how I met you was David Golumbia, and when I think in 2022, before he passed, he wrote a piece called "Chat GPT Should Not Exist." Um, David was like always kind of like way out in front on stuff.
I always thought, I mean, so for people who don't know, David Golumbia was a researcher who wrote quite a lot about like techno libertarians and anarcho capitalism and things like this. I think you could explain it better, but I remember him as always being like far in front of the curve in things like this. Like some
Absolutely.
of his early stuff on like Bitcoin libertarianism, I feel like that was like before I had even come close to connecting the dots there. If you want to talk like a little bit about David and some of his work, I would really appreciate that, because it's so sad that he passed and he did such great work.
Yeah. So, full disclosure, is a really good friend of mine and like a mentor. We wrote some pieces together. Um, but he was like really, I think one of the things he's known for is his work on Bitcoin and on cyber libertarianism. And I'm not really going to do it like a great justice, but what I would point out is the connections he made between these technologies and the far right, and between some of these technologies and some of these technologists, or venture capitalists and things like that, and this understanding or this belief that technology should sort of trump democracy. that innovation and the idea that software or algorithms or what have you, that companies and platforms and investors should have free reign in terms of the putting technologies out into the world that are harmful, because the most important thing is innovation. He called that cyber libertarianism, like that. There's this still, I think, prevailing narrative. I mean, it's disappeared somewhat, but that Silicon Valley had long been sort of liberal or left. He does in his book that was published posthumously. This is a really deep dive into talking about why that really was never true. And yeah, I think that in terms of the essay on Chat GPT, I think one of the things he located really early on, which I agreed with then, but like we're seeing really come true, is the way that it's like that chatbots writ large are like an anti-democratic force, and also the glee with which the people, kind of chatbot fetishists and Gen AI fetishists, like the glee with which they think about putting artists and creatives and professors, out of work is tied to their distaste and animus towards democracy. And so I think about him a lot whenever some of this stuff comes up, because when that piece came out, he received a significant amount of pushback. Um, I think it holds up really well. I mean, it was only 3 years ago, but like most of it turns out to have been pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot has changed and a lot hasn't since then, I
Yeah.
guess. And you know, uh, this is not a surprise to anyone, but it's like I have a lot of problems with AI and how it's used and how it's affecting people. And I feel like a lot of readers will email me and sort of say like, well, there's this, and you don't talk as much about the environmental impacts as you should. That's like one line of criticism, which we don't need to get into now. I agree. I want to do more on that. And then the other is that we're not talking enough about the potential privacy and surveillance implications of chatbots. And to be honest, one of the reasons that I feel like I haven't done that much work on that is because my mind has not expanded large enough to understand the ways in which this data is so sensitive. There's the obvious things like sometimes it leaks its training data, sometimes, there's been multiple instances of chats being leaked, things like that. But I honestly feel like the evilometer like has not been ratcheted to 10 yet in terms of like what is possible. And we've started to see like a little bit of this with like ChatGPT will call the cops on you if you start like showing suicidal ideation or something like this. And it's like rather than like fix things, they're just like, oh, we're just gonna like call the cops. Or rather than like to pull it out, like there's that aspect. But I'm curious, like I feel like you have definitely thought about this more than me. Like, what are some of the privacy concerns, surveillance concerns of like chat bots and our relationships with AI? I hate when people say our, but like people are like talking to these things and telling them a lot about themselves, and it does feel like a pretty big like privacy risk, but I don't even fully understand the implications of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it, and I've been working and thinking a lot about this for the book, which is that the big push, and I don't even know how much this works, how much it's going to work, things like that. But the big push towards agentic, in quotation marks, AI. That the thing is now that that in terms of like making AI an operating system or giving it access to everything you do, like your calendar, your contacts, your emails, your doctor's notes, like all these things, that in order for these systems to work, um, not on a sort of like, not even on a sort of technical scale, but just in order for it to do the things companies claim that it will do, it will need kind of unprecedented access and kind of unsiloed access to like your entire life. And, because privacy is relational, not only yours, but everybody you know. Um, and it would need to link all of those things together, you know? So if I wake up in the morning and say, like, check my chat bot to see what my schedule is and ask it to schedule an, appointment with my doctor and, write a love note to my partner and like, ask, tell my kid happy birthday, like all these things, right? Like that kind of like access is like unprecedented. Um, and the other thing is like these, I think when the companies are saying like it can, chatbots can be your coach, can be your partner. These things are not, like really, I don't know that the companies have like kind of like I don't know what their model for making money is. Right? Like I honestly don't, right? Except to get people to pay for this, you know. But I mean, they've suggested things like putting ads and things like that in it. Um, and so, how will we know, for instance, that what is going to be the level of influence that these things will have in terms of like, like nudging people in certain ways and things like that. That, and I think that thing that you pointed out with like, chat GPT will call the cops on you, right? Like, I think that that's like just sort of a small glimpse into it because like I understand these companies as being very, very closely aligned with an authoritarian government. Um, Not only in terms of kind of um, what kinds of ideologies these chatbots are allowed to have, right? But in the ways that it will report on you if you don't have a matching ideology. I mean, we're seeing that push sort of in universities right now. We're seeing it in the president's, edict against woke AI and things like that. And so I think when those are like a couple examples, but I think of like when the information silos, for instance, and things like that, they exist for a reason. Linking all these things together with a company that's also inclined with or allied with a particular ideology and is willing to function as sort of a carceral system, I think is really dangerous. And I don't think people have like even begun to kind of unravel that. Like like some people, but I don't think a lot of people. Like people are pouring their hearts into these systems and they don't know where that information is going.
Right. That's like where my brain goes is the advertising bit. I mean, also all the things you said right now, like you made many more connections than I had previously. But for me, it's like these companies are not making money. In fact, they are burning money. And one of the most reliable ways to make money online is with targeted advertising. And it's like, you see Facebook and Google spending just an insane amount of money on data centers and things like that. And they're not having to take on funding in the same way that OpenAI has needed to take like tons and tons of funding because they're losing money. But like Facebook and Google are propped up by their ad ecosystem and they're just printing money with ads. And it's so scary to think like Chat GPT starting to nudge you towards certain products or whatever when you're talking about a fight you had with your partner or something. It was like, well, have you tried roses from this like place? I
Yeah,
bought them for
yeah.
you already. And like, it's just like the possibilities there are very scary to me.
And what
Um,
would that mean for politics, for instance, right? I mean, like, think about the way that we're beset by ads during election seasons. And so when people are kind of walking around with Chat GPT in their ear all the time through their glasses or their headphones or some other wearable or whatever, right? So what would like a targeted political campaign look like through Chat GPT? I mean, it's like
mhm.
sort of nightmarish.
If you're a security or IT professional, you've got a mountain of assets to protect: devices, identities, and applications. It's a lot, and it can create a mountain of security risks. Fortunately, you can conquer that mountain of security risks with 1Password Extended Access Management. Over half of IT pros say securing SaaS apps is their biggest challenge. With the growing problems of SaaS sprawl and shadow IT, it's not hard to see why. Thankfully, Trellica by 1Password can discover and secure access to all your apps, managed or not. Trellica inventories every app your team uses and uses pre-populated app profiles to assess risks, manage access, optimize spend, and enforce security best practices. You can handle shadow IT, securely onboard and offboard employees, and meet compliance goals, all in one place. Over the years, I've come to trust 1Password. I use it for all my accounts, which actually wasn't always the case. I used to use a different password manager, which I was constantly having problems with, but that took me forever to switch away from due to pure inertia. When I finally made the switch to 1Password, I couldn't believe I hadn't done it sooner. I was also shocked by how easy it was. Migrating my passwords and getting myself back up and running took only a few minutes. 1Password is trusted by millions of users and over 150,000 businesses, from IBM to Slack. It's ISO 27001 certified, regularly audited, and even has the industry's largest bug bounty. Take the first step to better security for your team by securing credentials and protecting every application, even unmanaged shadow IT. Learn more at onepassword.com/404. That's onepassword.com/404, all lowercase. The holidays come fast. You're decorating, shopping, and trying to keep up, and somewhere in the middle of it, you realize those blinds could really use an upgrade. But who has time to deal with all that? With Blinds.com, you don't have to. You can refresh your space online easily and affordably before the holidays are in full swing. Thankfully, there's Blinds.com, a site that helps you bring your home to life your way. Whether you want to DIY, have it all done for you, or you're somewhere in between, choose what works for you and rest easy knowing the fit is guaranteed. There are hundreds of options, textures, colors, patterns, so you can build your perfect view without ever leaving the couch. And at Blinds.com, there are no pushy salespeople, no awkward in-home consultations. They can even send a licensed pro to measure your windows at no cost and install everything for one low price. No hidden fees, no surprises. Just beautiful blinds, guaranteed to fit, whether you want blackout or motorized options to classic shutters. So whether you're DIYing it or want the white glove treatment, Blinds.com has you covered. Because the only thing they treat better than windows is you. The Black Friday deals are going strong all month long, so don't miss your chance to save big. And as always, our listeners get $50 off when you spend $500 or more. Just use code 404media at checkout. Limited time offer. Rules and restrictions apply. See Blinds.com for details. I want to pivot back to cheerier topics, such as I want to talk about Flock and Ring. I feel like they're close, and I feel like you have had some of the best perspective on like how to think about these companies. And we've written so much about Flock. I've been very, very interested in it as a company, just primarily kind of how it has spread so quickly and has become such like this omnipresent thing, like a go-to for cops. Like the first thing that they type in when they're investigating a crime is like a license plate, etc. And it's like this company began as a company that sold automated license plate readers to private citizens, more or less. Like they were selling them to homeowners associations. And that is like an example of rich people opting others into surveillance for their own safety. And primarily, like we've seen with Ring and its associated, I hesitate to call it a social network, but Neighbors is like
Yeah.
the app that comes with the Ring. It's like this technology is disproportionately used against Black and brown people, against undocumented immigrants, against delivery people, like working class people who are like just doing their jobs and who some like rich person thinks is suspicious for whatever reason. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that phenomenon, because I feel like it has repeated itself over and over and over again. And it's like the toys of the rich are used against people that are disproportionately criminalized by the cops, disproportionately like marginalized by society, et cetera, et cetera. I know I just talked a lot there, but I feel like you have like a better perspective of like the history of it all, and how this technology is used against Black and brown people and delivery workers and working class people.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much there, I think, um, you know, I mean, first, the thing I would say about Flock is, I think the one interesting thing, because I'm strangely kind of obsessed with these guys' origin stories. And this guy, Langley is his name, who's the CEO of Flock. And he claims like he kind of started it because his car got broken into and like, there was no, like the person wasn't caught or something like that. But their tagline is that they plan to eliminate crime. And I think, I mean, not white collar crime, of course, right? Not wage theft. But I think the statistics, not only with Flock but with Ring, there's been various deep dives over the years. Cyrus Farivar did a really interesting one. Alfred Ings talked about it several times. Carolyn Haskins done great work on it. That they don't really, the effect on crime in terms of these devices and these technologies, the effect on like decreasing crime is widely overstated by the companies. But it does prey on people's fears. That in conjunction with neighbors or, next door, one of the things, like one of the functions of these devices is to help kind of exacerbate people's fears about who does and doesn't belong in their neighborhoods, to police workers and delivery drivers. I think again that's going to be exacerbated by this move with Amazon to now have workers wear glasses, smart glasses. The move towards having retail workers and other workers wear body cams now, and so they're all linked in these ways. But that a big part of that is to sort of impose a system of watching on people again who are like service workers, like people who like certain people don't think belong in their neighborhood and things like that. And that, you asked before kind of would it be possible to have these things in a way that wasn't sort of like so destructive to society? I mean, I think security cams are an example. There are some times that people would want security cameras or might need them, but the sort of mechanism and the landscape of having a ring, now a lot of times people can, like Ring and Flock are forming a partnership, or people can have their Ring footage or their video doorbell footage, not just Ring, sent to like fusion centers, so that cops can have like constant access or on demand access to these systems. I mean, you all just reported, I'm kind of like rambling too, but like these things are all connected, right? That you all just reported about the ruling that flock cameras are the ruling in Washington that flock cameras
Yeah,
are
flock camera footage, or well, the images taken from it are public records in Washington. Is sort
yeah.
of, and anyone can request them, and like I'm like kind of a transparency maximalist when it comes to like the systems that are being used by governments, and so it's like I want to know what they are, but I can also see how this is like quite concerning.
Yeah, the implications for this are wild. And I don't know if that, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know how that will hold up, or if that will be used as precedent or anything like that, but the implications for that are absolutely wild.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I knew when I had you on, I was just like, there's not one thing I want to talk to you about, because it feels like all of this stuff is very connected. It's the same thing happening like over and over and over again. And then these different systems are like, they're all hooking together. And I think that's like the big thing for me, where it's like, we talk about data silos, where it's like information used for one purpose should not be used for another purpose. And that's sort of like how you would like to, that's how you would like, say, like government information to work. Like your tax information should not be used to arrest you by, like, I shouldn't be able to find your address because they asked the IRS or whatever.
Right.
And like it feels like all of those walls in society are breaking down like all at the same time. And I
Yeah.
don't know what we're supposed to do about it.
Yeah,
Please fix, Chris. Please fix.
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think they're being, people are actively breaking them down, and companies. Um, you know, a thing I think is really important is the positive effects of a lot of these things. Again, like, I mean, it's generally true that because companies have a thing to sell, they're going to wildly overstate the positive effects of these things. Whether that's like how good is an Apple Watch for your health, or how much a doorbell camera increases your safety. Like, I mean, generally, like the answers are kind of not much. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but like, kind of the answer is like not much. But these companies have done such a great job of convincing everyone, not only that these things are going to greatly help them, but kind of occluding the harmful effects to society. I mean, like, it's so corrosive now that, like, you would have to wonder, like, if someone has a pair of thick framed glasses, and you're in a locker room, or you're having a private conversation or whatever, now you have to like wonder, is this person, filming me? You always have to wonder, like, are you being recorded? Like, people are, can't put pictures of their kids' faces on the internet anymore because it's being like scraped and winds up, contributing to the production of CSAM. I mean, like, all of these things are so, like, I keep using this word over and over, but they're like so harmful and so toxic and corrosive to society. But here's like where I'm not an optimist, right? But like, here's where the thing I think is that I think there's more and more awareness of this. I think that in a lot of ways, these companies have begun to overplay their hands, in terms of not only their like explicit political alliances, but the way I've put it before is that they used to sell you something and say you paid for it with surveillance. And now they're just selling you surveillance, that, particularly with wearables, but for a lot of things, like with so-called agentic AI, it's like, look, if we can ingest everything, like, we'll help you optimize your life. Like, that's the thing now, right? As opposed to
Hmm.
like, well, you get to be connected with your friends overseas and we'll show you a few ads, you know, like, that's
Right.
like a major change. And I think
That's
they're
a really good
overplaying their
point.
hand
Yeah.
a bit.
Sorry. Sorry.
No, no, no. Like, I think they're overplaying their hand a bit.
Yeah. You mentioned, not putting your kids' faces on the internet. Like, we're talking audio only. This will be audio only when it's online, and you've made like sort of the conscious decision to try to keep your face off the internet as much as possible. I think, given this conversation, that is, the reasons for that are obvious. But I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit about not just why that is, but more like, has it been difficult to do this? Or is it just like, no, I'm just not posting pictures of myself on social media?
I mean, it's not difficult for me. There are pictures of me on the internet. I didn't put them there, is like the way I'll put it. I try whenever possible to not feed the machine. And I know, like, my state sells pictures of my driver's license to the feds and things like that. There are ways, we cannot avoid that. But I really kind of started thinking about this like during the pandemic, and when everyone was Zooming, and it became the norm to sort of critique people's backgrounds and the books in their background, and everyone was supposed to get a ring light and things like that. And ed tech companies were doing room scans to make sure that make sure, in quotation marks, that students weren't cheating. That the easy kind of normalization of people's image, and all the ways that is, has been used to harm them. Um, again, and like, to bring it full circle again, right, all the way up to and including like deep fakes and other kinds of like, sort of sexual assault imagery that can be made now with, some of these systems. And so, yeah, I do my best whenever possible. to not feed the machine. It hasn't been super hard, like once I explained it. Like initially people would give me a hard time, because I've done some podcasts, and in the Washington Post profile, I had to like fight pretty hard to like not have my face in that. I think there's a different standard for not famous people and famous people in terms of like like how much you're allowed to control your image. I'm very much
I
not
think you're
famous.
famous.
Come for me. But yeah, I do it because, and part of the reason I do it is like I have gained like enough credibility at least to say I don't want to do this, and people will still have me on their show or whatever. And so I want to kind of like create a space where other people could do that too.
Yeah, I think this idea of not feeding the machine, that's sort of like what I take into my day-to-day life outside of journalism is like I try to like buy stuff from small businesses rather than Amazon, rather than Walmart. Like I stopped using Amazon when we were reporting on their labor abuses like 8 years ago, and I didn't use them for like 5 years, and I didn't find it to be like very difficult to stop. And I feel like once you start cutting things out, you realize, as you said, like they don't necessarily add that much to your life. And like maybe that is not going to stop these companies. Maybe it's not like some huge act of resistance to like use my feet to walk to the store or to bike to the store or drive to the store rather than like click around. But it made me feel better at least. And I
Yeah.
guess, um, you know, I have opted into tons of tech companies and stuff. Like I'm recording this on on Riverside, which is some AI podcast company that makes this stuff easier. And that's just because like it's not that I gave up. It's just that I've started to try to be like picky and choose like which services I'll use and which I won't. And I'm wondering if you think that's like, is that good? Should people be doing this? Does it matter? I feel like it matters, but
Yeah. And so I think it matters, not in the exact way I think people often think about it. And so the way I try to parse it is like Amazon tech, like the company, they're not affected if I don't use Amazon. And like I don't use Amazon. Like they're not affected. But I think and so this sort of idea, I think because of sort of like how VC money works and, like how monopolies work and things like that, this sort of idea that as consumers, we're going to make like some small choice that's going to like force these companies to change. Like, I don't think it works like that anymore. Right. Like, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Like I don't think I have time to go into, but
right,
here's like how I think about it though, is that it does sort of, acclimate us, into a mode of thinking and like a form of community, that will give us access to sort of larger movements and actions that will move the needle, right? And so, like, like the example I've used forever, like I live in Michigan, and there's like, pipelines running underneath the Great Lakes with oil, right? And like, so like, those companies are way bigger polluters than like I'll ever be, you know. But I still don't like throw like my garbage out the window, right? I still recycle, right? Like like I understand these things like as me as an individual, like kind of doesn't like it matters not in the sense that like I'm changing the world by like doing or not doing those things, but like by activating my consciousness in terms of like um doing larger actions that might actually have some kind of like meaningful resistance, right? Like I mean, I don't know people really who use Chat GPT or chatbots. Like I don't know, most people I know don't have Ring doorbells and things like that. um I don't think that's incidental, right? Like, or accidental. Like I think that I'm part of a community who like understands like a lot of these things as like harmful to society.
right. I mean, I think that I think the last thing I want to talk about is how we fight back or like raise awareness and that sort of thing, which is like you said you're not an optimist. I'm not really an optimist either. However, like I have seen when we write about these technologies, like there's always someone in a town somewhere or a city somewhere saying like, I brought this up at our city council meeting and we are reconsidering our contract with Flock, or we are like reconsidering whether we want to buy a Ring doorbell, like that sort of thing. And I do think that people are beginning to like, it's not just like a niche concern anymore. It's not like a niche concern of privacy activists and journalists. It's like people I am like randomly meeting seem to like understand that this is an overreach, that these companies are overplaying their hand. And then like, yes, they're continuing to expand, but they're also losing contracts. Like these surveillance companies are losing contracts at a state and local level all the time for privacy overreaches and that sort of thing. And like, I guess that gives me hope. Um, is that like the best we can hope for at this moment? Is sort of like a piecemeal like local level resistance that hopefully like bubbles up at some point to a broader, better system, or like how do you kind of see our way
Yeah.
out of
Well,
this?
I mean, I think what you all do, like you all are crushing it. Like, I mean, I think, and I think part of what something that you said that I want to latch onto is that like people don't know, right? Like, I spend all of my time thinking and writing and reading about this stuff. I mean, you obviously are a journalist and, your organization is just like doing scoop after scoop. But like the average person, like doesn't know a lot of this stuff. Like they're not deeply embedded in, like they don't know about Flock or, they don't know the extent to which, you know, Facebook slop is, or like AI slop is like being monetized on Facebook, like all these things. Like I think that awareness is crucial because I think there are so many people who don't know that these systems, like the extent to the harm of these systems, right? Like I think a lot about the story that these companies tell about what their privacy invasions are. Like Facebook's like, well, there's a little bit of surveillance and you get like meaningful ads, and like meanwhile there's like pixels of Facebook, like when you are making an appointment with your therapist or like whatever. So I think that is really important. I think it's kind of a grim moment right now, in terms of a lot of this stuff. But, this is a point I made before, but I think that it's now pretty explicit, where these companies stand, what kinds of things they're willing to do, like erase trans people, target immigrants, um, like get rid of apps on their sites that help keep people safe, like all these things. Like they've been very explicit about who they are. you
It
know
does feel like a mask off moment society wide that we didn't really have after 2016, where like a lot of these tech companies were like, no, we care about this stuff. Like,
right?
kind
Yeah,
of, kind
yeah,
of.
right. And like I think people will remember this. I think that that when the wind changes, right? Like, they can't then come back, won't be able to come back and say, oh, actually, we do care about equity, right? Or actually, we are pro immigrant. Like, not like we know who you are now. Where I think, again, for like people who have the advantage of always paying attention to these companies, like, yeah, they're capitalist companies and they sort of, um, you know, uh, change their message according to like to align with power, right? But like it's pretty extreme right now, and I think that there's going to be yeah, there's no kind of pretending now who or what they are, and I think that that's really important for in terms of like how we move forward.
Chris, where should people find you?
um I mean, I kind of am on Blue Sky, as hyper visible. I my book is going to come out sooner or later on MIT Press, Luxury Surveillance. Still doing some writing here and there. And yeah, that's mainly it.
As always, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I feel like we could talk for like 3 hours, but Joseph needs to record a podcast in a few minutes. But I really appreciate the time. We'll have you back on soon. And thank you so much for all the work you do and for always making time for us to help us contextualize some of these horrors so that we can spread the word and then eventually fight back. We are fighting back, but
Yeah. And I'm a huge fan, I get of your team, of you and, Samantha, Emmanuel, and Joseph. Again, you all are crushing it. So I don't get to talk to you that much. So I just want to point out, the stuff you do is so valuable to the rest of us.
We do leave the compliments in the podcast. I really appreciate it. It means so much. We have so much respect for your work, and that's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not paid to say that, by the way. It's very genuine.
As a reminder, 404 Media is journalist founded, journalist owned, and supported by our subscribers. If you want to subscribe to 404 Media and directly support our work, you can go to 404media.co. You'll get unlimited access to our articles and an ad-free version of this podcast. You'll also get to listen to the subscribers only section of every episode, where we talk about a bonus story each week. This podcast is made in partnership with Kaleidoscope. Another way to support us is by leaving a 5-star rating and review for the podcast, which really helps us out. This has been 404 Media. We will see you next time.